Steve here, got another video for you, and in this video I'm going to share some pretty personal stories about how I got started in this getting into these very deep connected realities in 5D. And I'm also going to explain the differences between the different timelines, okay? So first let me just start by saying is that, let me give you an overview first, is that if you haven't seen any of my other videos before, these different timelines are representative of different frequencies, and these different frequencies give you different choices, okay? If you're on this timeline, you have a set of choices. If you're on this time, you get a different set of choices, and if you're on this time line, you get a different set of choices. I can give you an example. Let's say that you're on the lower frequency timeline, you have some fears that are unresolved or some past traumas, and you just don't want to stand out and shine your light because you have these fears, anxiety, concerns, okay? If that's you, then what happens is if an opportunity shows up in your life, let's say you're visualizing or you're meditating and an opportunity shows up, but the fear is still there. You haven't completely let go of it. It's still stored in your body. And by the way, that fear stays there because you hold it there. You give it life by resisting it. When you resist the fear, it actually gives it life. And it's very counterintuitive. I know, I've gone through it. But for most people, I would say 99% of people, that fear, the only way to get rid of it from your life completely, so you don't feel it at all, you have no more anxiety, you have no more fear, is to go in a deep, deep trance. And I'm going to share a personal story on how I did that. Not that I recommend it. So when we're on this timeline, if you get opportunities or something comes into your world where, let's say you have an opportunity to network or start a business or speak in front of people, but you have a fear of speaking, then you're not going to move forward with that opportunity because of your fear. Okay, so the fear, that's what I'm saying, even though you have free will, the fear actually guides your choices, okay, because you do not want to be afraid or look stupid speaking in front of a group of people. And because of that fear, for some people they're more afraid of that than dying, right? Because of that fear, you're not going to do it. So that's not a choice in this timeline. However, if you were to go into a deep state of trance, if I did it with you or someone else, someone who doesn't have that fear, it has to be someone who doesn't have that fear, and you were able to let it go energetically so that you're not resisting anymore, and then what happens is that energy starts to free up some space. You start to feel a bit more spacious inside. Then all of a sudden you bump up to the next timeline, which we'll call your neutrality. You're just neutral. Now the opportunity comes to you to speak in front of those people, and the fear is no longer present, right? Now you're like, oh, I don't have a fear of public speaking. But I don't really want to do it either. And so you don't choose the opportunity, which is totally fine, right? Because it's not something you have a desire or an interest in. But let's say that you don't have the fear and you do have an interest in it. Well, guess what happens? That opportunity now shows up. You go and speak in front of people and you're like, oh, that was fun. I think I'll do it again. New timeline, new choices, right? Okay. Now, before we go to the next timeline, 5D, which I'll talk about more. I'll talk about the differences between these two, and then I'll talk more about my story. So, actually, I'll share my story first. So, about 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, so I started meditating back in 2010. Susan James was the woman who introduced it to me. I haven't stopped since. It was just something I gravitated towards. And if I do stop for a day, it's like I miss it. The next day I'm on it again. I would just do 20 minutes a day. Now it's been almost a year. I do an hour, at least an hour a day, usually 45 minutes, an hour a day, okay? But 2.5 years ago, what I was doing was I was smoking a lot of weed, okay? And weed's legal in Canada at that time. I think it was. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And anyways, I would smoke it, but it wasn't smoking it to like get high and like run away from my problems or like get into a state of like mysticism. I was just smoking weed. I would do it knowing I would go and meditate. I was doing it intentionally. But what happened is that the weed became a crutch, and then I needed it to get into trance. So what I would do, and this is the truth, is I would go out on our back deck outside. I would smoke this weed. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon because of my business. You know, I work sporadically throughout the day. And it'd be like, I got 4 or 5 hours set aside now. I would smoke this weed. And then I would go downstairs, lie on my yoga mat, and I would do breathing, deep breathing, sometimes for 2 hours. And I'm just noticing and watching. And it was almost like I would induce this state of trance from the weed, and then I would go on the mat, and then I would do the breathing, and I would go really deep into this trance. But the problem is that every time I did it, I needed the weed to get into this deep trance. So that's why I'm saying I don't recommend this. I'm just saying what I learned from the experience. What I learned to do was that if you do the proper technique, you can actually get into the trance without any external stimulant, without any drugs at all. And you can get into these very, very deep trance states where you're still aware that you have consciousness, you're aware of, but you're not aware of your body. You're very, very feeling much like energy and space. You feel connected to all things. You feel this sense of unity. You feel that if you say something or think something, it can show up over here. Like it shows up very quickly. So kind of like a dream state, like an astral dream state, but you're still in your waking conscious mind. You're not asleep. And you're aware. So anyways, I started with the weed. That induced the states. I started doing these breathing meditations, sometimes 2 hours at a time, 3-4 hours a day. And I got into these deep states. But what the problem was is that, and I eliminated a lot of fear in my life from actually like breathing through and just noticing, in these states. The problem is that I wasn't, I had to rely on the weed to get there. And it was a process where now I can do it 5-10 minutes. I can get into this deep trance. And I take clients very quickly into it. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing. Okay. No, just you and I breathing, using this technique. Now, why would I want to do that, right? Well, what happens is when you get into this state, this we'll call it 5D, okay? But it's really a deep, deep trance. You realize that you're connected to everything. You're a part of everything. You also realize that you're energy, and that if you need energy, you can breathe it in and use the breath to gain energy. So you know how like a lot of people will say that they need food to get energy. Yes, food is a source of energy, because food is energy. But the breath is also energy. The breath, breathing, is energy. And you can get energy just from breathing. So if you feel like stressed out or you have a headache or whatever, you can use the breath to either get rid of the headache or to get more energy. And I would do this a lot in the last couple of years because I've been running a lot more. Before I go for a run, I want to get energized. And I'll even go on the run and I do Wim Hof breathing during the run where I'm getting energy from the breath. Why am I talking so much about the breath? The reason I'm talking about it so much is because I would use the breath to get into these very deep states of trance where I feel a lot like energy and not like my body. So I just feel like a point of awareness, okay? And the reason that's important is because when you get to this state of unity and you do it and practice it long enough, then during your waking day, you feel the same way. You feel a state of connectedness. You feel more intuitive. You feel more psychic. You can pick up on vibrations that are very subtle of other people, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. You can just think of people and they will call you or contact you. Things like that. Very subtle energies that most people are completely unaware of. You become aware of during the day from practicing going into this deep trance states. That's 5D in a nutshell. But what stops people from getting there? Well, number one, practice, right? Practicing it, developing the skill. Most people can't do meditation for more than 1 or 2 minutes. They lose their train of thought and then they just they get distracted because they have so many thoughts all the time. When I was doing these deep 2-hour meditations about 2 summers ago, I would get into such a state where I would go through the whole day, I would just be a point of awareness throughout the whole day. And I would notice maybe 3 or 4 times during the entire day that I would have thoughts. Okay, so you got to remember, I was doing this and just totally focusing on being in this state of awareness. And for a lot of people, they can't do that. They got obligations, they got kids, but for me, I did it. And I would do it, and the reason I was do it is because I felt it was connecting me with something that was more deeper and meaningful. Now, the other side of this is that during the day, and I'm not saying you have to do this 4 or 5 hours a day, but if you do it 45 minutes to an hour a day, and you get into these deep trance states and then get into these elevated emotions and visualize the things you want, but just come out of it and this is really important, when you come out of this meditation, you're just noticing and watching. You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not even trying to do anything. You're just noticing and watching your mind, your emotions, and what's happening. And then you just keep going through the day, noticing, watching. And what happens is, because you're present and you're noticing, you're watching, you're not trying to do anything, you're not trying to fix anything, you're not trying to control anyone, is that's where the ideas come from. That's where the information comes from. That's where the downloads come from. That's where the insight comes in. And that's when you're like, oh, I never thought of doing it that way. And then it guides the direction of your life in an entirely different way. So if this is like the 3D world, this is a 5D world, okay? And to go from here to there is not a big deal, as long as you, like I said, you practice, and the other thing is you've eliminated all these other fears that have been holding you back for years, if not, even previous lifetimes. But the 3D world is like the land of opposites, where like someone says something and you react, right? Where you're in a state of polarity all the time. In 5D, there's oneness, there's connectivity, there's love, there's appreciation, there's compassion. There's these elevated states that you feel all the time. There's love, there's joy, and you feel them regardless what the story of the mind is, because you're noticing the mind. You're not in the mind. You're not coming from the mind. You're coming from the observer. And that's what 5D is about. And like I said, it's not about necessarily practicing it all day. It's about doing the practice that 45 minutes, an hour during the day, and then just being the observer the rest of the day. And as you do that, life gets simpler, it gets more enjoyable, you can be more spontaneous, you can have more fun. There's a less of a focus on money and getting things as there is of giving and contributing, because you feel alive, you feel vital, and you want to share that with others, okay? Anyways, so that's a short version of this without taking you through the meditation. It's hard for me to explain it because I'm explaining it to someone who's in a 3D world, but I'm like, it's really about connecting with another dimension. And it's available to anyone who's got a fully functioning human brain, because that technology is required. That pineal gland, that piezoelectric sensor in your brain is what activates this connectivity to the oneness, okay? Now, a lot of people are spontaneously upgrading to this 5D, but there are a lot of people that are still have fears and still don't want to let go of the 3D world that they live in because they're afraid of the unknown, which again is another fear. So if you are in the state where you know that this is something you want to do, but you feel still fearful, you feel still uncertainty, you feel just, maybe it's a fear of the unknown, maybe it's a fear of success, maybe it's a fear of failure, whatever the fear is, a fear of not knowing your life purpose, those sorts of things, and you want to help me to help you release it finally and once and for all, and I can help you do that, okay? I'd be happy to. However, before we do that, I've got to speak with you to two things. One is, are you willing to let it go? And then number two, we want to pinpoint where the fear is and what is it that's holding you back. And once we know what that is, if you're willing to let it go, then there's a good likelihood that if you're willing to invest a little bit of money, it's I don't charge that much for this, then I can help you release it. So if you want to do a 30-minute call with me to at least explore that and pinpoint what it is that's holding you back, and I guarantee it's not someone else, it's not something outside of you, it's definitely something that's stored in your body, and it's usually in those lower energy centers below the stomach and below that, in those creative centers, that usually that energy, once it's unstuck, then you automatically pop up to these higher timelines. And I can show you how to get into this one because I have a second meditation where we do an intention manifestation meditation, okay? It's not free, but again, the call is free if you just want to explore it with me and see if it's something that you want to take to the next step. Okay? Awesome. Thanks for watching and listening. There's a link below if you want to jump on a call with me to explore that. Like I said, it is free. And then on the call, what we'll do is we'll chat and we'll see where is it. Are you willing to let it go? And if I can help you, I will tell you that. If I can't, I'll tell you that too. And either way, look forward to speaking with you. And I hope you've been enjoying these videos. If you haven't, and this is a new video to you, please subscribe to my channel. And I also have my book, which is coming out later this year, probably early next year. You can get on the waiting list at the link down below. Thanks again for watching and sharing these videos and liking them and just supporting me overall. Love you guys. Have an awesome day. Talk to you next time.